What's going on? I just wanted to do a quick video um, regarding specifically the Middle East conflict and people that wherever you are, you see news sources, and you're probably curious. Um, the questions might be who these people were, what were they responsible for, what is Israel working on right now? How is Israel different from another nation state, or is it the same thing? There's a tons of questions you can ask, and if you're being completely honest and you're taking a view from, say, the 2000s towards now, there's absolutely nothing good that's coming out of this. It's not saying that, this isn't even speaking about, people always want to know, well, is this an optimal outcome for the West, or is this a way that we can set up the free people of Palestine and Lebanon to be back on their? And that's all it is. It's all an action movie. It's all a bunch of nonsense. You know, Whatever. If you want to say it's a bunch of bullshit, it's a bunch of bullshit. And so for Lebanon's part, they've been part of both partnerships as well as disagreements with Israel for a while. And for the last, what has it been now, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, they've been in a deep economic recession. They've been able to get very little to no traction to actually fix that. I'm sure if you talk to policy leaders and people that are working within the finance and business environment, they have things they'd want to work on. They have ideas for how the political system would work. And I'm sure they could put it into, what are Lebanese politics, right? What are the things we actually really need to stand up for, and we really need to be adamant about all this other stuff. And so that's Israel and Hezbollah have been at war for, it's been a while now. It's been a long time coming. And so, um, you know, whatever, it's always sad when you see someone that, in theory, it's like, why couldn't we have just had this conversation? Why, we have to be able to work with anyone. People don't want to think like that, right? They want the soundbite, and they want people to, just let them know that everything's okay and they're comfortable. We'll just stay out of this stuff then, right? Get a hobby, you know, figure out a way to work on yourself. If you want to be in this stuff, then sort of be in this stuff more. And then the other side of it is what's next for Gaza, Palestine, that area. And they've been, Israel and Hamas have been either directly in conflict or posturing for a conflict like this since 2004, 2003, whatever it was. And so, if you want to look at what has what has the Gazan economy been like, what do people have to say when they ask you about Gaza and Palestine? Well, and there's good reasons for this, right? When you talk about if you want to talk about Western dominance, or imperialism, whatever word you want to use that's not actually describing reality, it's true, but you're using ideology to push this forward. Well, Gaza and Hamas they've been arms traders, they've been drug dealers, they've been money launderers. That's what Hamas has been. They've been marrying these Islamist jihadi organizations. They've been trying to politicize and nationalize these organizations that started as terrorists. And Israel, for their part, as well as whoever else you want to say, it's all a bunch of bullshit, right? Israel's just been basically building a military that's capable of fending off this threat, as well as exerting as much national pressure as possible to make this appear not viable. And so what do you get? Well, you get this war of basically extermination. Israel's lost all credibility, all ability to do anything in the international sense. And Lebanon doesn't, if you ask someone what's next for Lebanon, no one knows today, right? If you ask what's next for Gaza and Palestine, well, you assume the conflict just ends at some point and you start rebuilding, and then what? You have the same question set. So this is just, if you see the partisan hacks and people who are pushing a specific candidate or political agenda, it's just total bullshit, right? It's total bullshit, and it's completely outside what I think reasonable diplomats have wanted to do for a long time, And so if you look at diplomacy, you can see two sides to the coin, right? On the one hand, there's this stuff that we need to be able to do, these conversations we need to be able to have, these things we need to have meaning and value around, and we need to be able to sort of contextualize this across the aisle. Um, and the other side of this is like none of that really matters all that much. When you ask what actually is going to get done in the future, what actually happens, it's none of this bullshit. That's for fucking sure, right? You know? And so, like, I think, like, a reasonable way to say this is, like, well, you know, like, this is, here's, like, and I don't mean to, like, why not talk into what's already a politicized event or space? Like, if we look at, like, Lebanon, how are you managing your ports, right? We all have to talk about this. Everyone's accountable for something like this. You know, if you just see something, some phenomenon, social phenomena, whatever it is, drugs or arms, human smuggling pop up in 5 years, what the fuck did you do about this? What's your relationship to the fact that you live in an area that's critical for logistics and supply chain and shipping? And, when you have a government, right, you always got to ask these questions about, like, well, okay, who's the guy that you actually talk to about this? And then, in a sort of development context and all this other stuff, and this is why, there is parity. There's absolutely parity for the level of bullshit, but there's not parity in some sense, right? And we got to be able to somehow talk around this and talk past it and take responsibility for the stuff that we've actually done. But at some point you have some guy who answers to a bureaucracy. They have responsibilities for collecting revenue. They have responsibility for a budget. They have a responsibility for the outcomes that are being produced by something like a shipping lane or something like this, right? That intersects with you. And so, when you take this and move it back and ask, like, well, what are our politics and what are we doing and all this other stuff, it's just like, well, I'm just always fucking surprised and shocked how, it seems like nothing can get done. And so what do you want to say? What do you want to say? It's nothing. People have decided to celebrate something that's never going to be anything. And so that's the video. Yeah, that's it. There's nothing foundational to be found here. There's nothing to securitize around. There hasn't been anything new to securitize around. And so you have it's just like a large group of losers, right? It's a large group of losers, We're ripping stuff from the ground. We're making the same shit out of it. We're not getting anything back from it. So what?